Hello, Michael. Welcome to the Power Talk Show powered by Business Talks Weekly. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining us today. Before we dive into a conversation, can you walk through us a little bit about your professional background and what really led you from an AI expert to a marketing leader?
Sure. So I have a degree in corporate finance. So naturally, with that degree, I immediately became a software developer. And just, one of those things where I fell into roles where software development paid much better. And if it's one thing in corporate finance, they teach you is cash flow. And that's the way I went. So I was a software developer for a number of years, but always with a business mindset. And so I worked in a lot of different places. I've worked for, YC startups. I've worked, in government as a, contractor and worked with the military. And eventually, through a whole bunch of different stuff, ended up as a co-founder of an application that was in a number of accelerators. And then, of course, like a lot of startups, that crashed. And then I went into a technical marketing role at a company that was pre-IPO that did really well, that was cybersecurity based. I have a background in cybersecurity as well. And became the director of demand generation for it post IPO and was there for a number of years. And then from that, if you may or may not be aware and your audience may not be aware, there's actually quite a lot of AI in cybersecurity to do threat detection, anomaly detection kind of things. And so the writing was kind of on the wall that AI was going to be big and just felt a little constrained by my experiences there. So left to start my own company that does the blend of AI and marketing that, the expertise I'd come to, gain over all those years.
Wow, that's really interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about the product or the company that you're working currently?
Yeah. So I'm co-founding a company called Knowatoa, which the easy elevator pitch is that this is a rank tracker for AI systems. So if you want to know how your company in a B2B context, is represented in ChatGPT, if prospects are looking for it, if they're trying to get advice, if they're trying to do that kind of thing, where do you stand? What kind of information is it giving out? And we help you track that. But more what we're trying to do is really turn that into actions that you can then turn around to influence that and to try to get like a good base of knowledge into these systems about your company. Something a customer said to us that we repeat just all the time is they said, right now, ChatGPT is our most popular and least well trained company representative because all day, everyday people are asking crazy questions in it. And is it telling them the right thing? Is it, accurate? And that's a real challenge today.
Understood. So, Michael, if I understand, is this correlated to generative search engine and online brand reputation?
Yes, very much so. So I think a real issue with talking about a lot of these systems is that it's very abstract. So we've tried to make it as grounded as possible. So when you come into our application, right from the homepage, what you do is you put in your website. And what we actually do is look that up against the traditional search terms that you're already ranking for, with the thought that, people are still people pre AI, post AI. They're just trying to solve their problems. They're trying to find solutions to the issues their businesses are having. And, that translates from traditional search into ChatGPT, into AI overviews, into everything else. And so we're trying to help people shift from the old ideas about content marketing, organic search traffic generation to the new ways, really with the thought of having a really high ROI per marketing dollar. Like nobody's got infinite budgets. Much better to spend the money where you can have an impact than where an AI is just going to answer things directly for you.
Understood. Understood. Makes sense. So, Michael, in earlier search engine trends, if you search for your brand or your name in Google, in Bing, in Yahoo, they used to give us different results. Are
Mhm.
we seeing some similar trends when we are searching in ChatGPT, Gemini AI, Prexperiality, or any other AI?
Definitely. And there's, I think, two sort of reasons for that. One of which is these draw from different sources. So, just as like a very easy conceptual thing, OpenAI has a multi-billion dollar relationship with Microsoft. That's very public. you know, Microsoft owns LinkedIn, they own GitHub. And part of that relationship is explicitly that the OpenAI is allowed to draw out the information in LinkedIn and on GitHub and use it as part of their answers. So if you're in a spot where you're trying to influence ChatGPT, you're much better off putting your information on LinkedIn. Another again, just very clear example of this is Reddit. A lot of people are already trying to do B2C influence on Reddit, but more and more we're seeing B2B influence, particularly because, again, ChatGPT has a multi-million-dollar relationship with Reddit where they've licensed the content. And right now there's lawsuits with, say, Anthropic, which is another,
Yeah.
Anthropic makes Claude. They're indexing Reddit illegally, quote unquote, somehow. I'm not a lawyer, but there's a lawsuit saying, oh, you're indexing this in a way that's not allowed. And there's, being blocked. So it's less influential if you're trying to reach Claude. And, in general, my thinking is that the new way to handle content marketing is that you should, try to generate content that's more down funnel, that's more really hitting the exact objections that people have, really trying to get into the comparisons of like, what's the best X, solution in my category. Get that content and then distribute it to all these different places as much as possible. And we're seeing that as a winning formula for our clients.
Absolutely. Makes sense. And Michael, as you were talking about lawsuits, I would like to understand, is there any best practices in using AI, or is there any ethical way that we can channel this AI in the coming future? Obviously, everybody is using, but are there any best practices to it?
You're asking if there's best practices to using AI as a tool. So I think the best long-term way to think about it, and this is very personal, like how I think about this day to day as I'm choosing what to do, is to use AI as a coach and a teacher. And I very rarely, either with code or writing, I write a ton of articles and newsletters and stuff. I never really just say like, hey, do this for me. I use it to reflect, hey, what are the key points I should cover in this? And then I write it, then I get some reflection. The same with code. Like I'll write code and then I will write tests for it and then sort of, use that to improve my own mindset on this. The pattern I really like is the conductor pattern, which is like I'm the conductor of an orchestra of AI stuff. And so I need to know what is happening in each section. I need to tell it what to do and I need to guide it, but I don't need to I don't need to actually play the violin and the trombone at the same time. I just need to make sure it happens. And I think there's just massive productivity gains, but also experience gains where, if there's things I don't know in a technical sense, AI is tremendous at explaining that to me. And I think that's a superpower that people can adopt today.
But what about the data security? Your company information, your personal information, everything
Sure.
is out there, and there might be certain AI platforms using and utilizing that data.
Yeah.
Is that ethical, and how does a company safeguard themselves?
So I think there's two pieces to this. In much the same way as, there is obviously proprietary company information that should not be thrown into AI systems for anyone to get access to. But also there is tremendous amounts of marketing information. I would like people, you run a company, at a very least, you would like them to know what sector you're in, what problems you solve, what level of company, is it big companies or small companies that you help, and all your blog posts, all of that. And, you know, so on that side of it, I think, there's very deliberate ways you can, give access, let these bots index your site, do well in rankings. And on the proprietary side, I think you do need to keep that internal. And I think that's the same basic data controls that if you have, the salary list of everyone in your company as a comma separated file, if you accidentally post that to your website somehow, like that's gone anyway. Like that's a problem, whether or not it's AI. I think AI makes those things more difficult, but in general, I think that there is that separation. I don't know. Here's the question. Have you ever looked at a system prompt for any of the AI tools?
No, not in detail. If you would
So
like to share, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a neat sort of thing. So, how you sort of program an AI after it's been trained is the same way that you do with a prompt. So, in the same way that you go in and you type, like, hey, write me a poem about a spider, whatever you wanted to do, what happens is there's a system prompt that ChatGPT has, that Anthropic has, that all these systems has, which is like paragraphs and paragraphs of text, which is, just written plainly in English and says what the system should do. And if you look at those and like these are public, they often get leaked. there's a lot of safeguards in there. And there's a lot of safeguards actually about intellectual property where these companies are, I think, like sensitive to where they're getting their information from. I think a great example is with books. Authors are, of course, obviously, and I think rightly, very sensitive about, hey, my book was scooped up and
Yes.
now you're just going to regurgitate it out in a chat GPT session. That's obviously not right. So if you look at these system prompts, a lot of them say like, do not quote more than 20 words out of any book in order. And so, that's the sort of thing where like, hey, I'm looking for a book. I read it before. I'd like to know it. It talked about this stuff. That's enough to let it give you a recommendation for it, to let it understand, but not to be a substitute. And there have been some lawsuits around this where, you know,
The
it's
authors
still in
have
the air, but I think there's good intentions at least. So, yeah.
absolutely. Which one is your favorite, Michael? Which one are you using the most, and which one do you feel like, it's going to explode in the near future?
So, with respect to like just generative AI tooling, I use ChatGPT a lot for almost how I would normally use Google. That if I have a question like, what kind of food does a giraffe eat? I'll often use ChatGPT. I use Claude a lot for software development. I use Cursor and you can choose what models are in that. I use Claude and Claude Code a lot for that. I use Gemini some for some other things. Within the application, we obviously do a lot of AI work and we actually integrate with all the different systems to do the tracking. So, yeah, all of them.
And what's next? What's the next big thing that is going to happen?
I think the next big thing with respect to AI and search is we're going to see just a massive fracturing of search. Where right now, search is something that like I go over to Google and I do a search and then I go to these websites and I go back and forth. I think we're going to see search as more and more of a feature just in all these different systems. And I think that's why these companies are implementing them. Like here's an example. A company we haven't talked about so far is Meta.
Yeah.
Meta has literally spent billions of dollars developing an open source AI model called Llama. And these, are regularly updated. They regularly come out. And now we're starting to see why they're doing that from a business sense. In WhatsApp, on the front page of WhatsApp, when you log in, is a Meta AI button. And you tap that, you can ask it any question you want. It's free, it's right there. And we're seeing, and these are again like public statements that things like Instagram, they are expanding search in there to not just be like searching for a tag, but to actually search more in the terms that we think about. And those are oftentimes very commercial searches. Excuse me. So my wife and I went on a trip. She wanted to find restaurants for the city we're going to. She looked on Instagram, like best food there, and she could see pictures and, all of this. That's a very commercial search. And we're seeing the same thing across all sorts of stuff. Another really great example of this sort of search fracturing and search becoming a feature is Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon has a Rufus sales assistant. It's on the front page of Amazon. It's on the Amazon app. On every single product page, there are AI questions that have been drawn out. And they're like, hey, I want to get this bike. And it pulls out the most popular questions about it from the reviews, from the feedback. And that's actually based on Claude. So if you happen to be an Amazon seller or you have a tremendous number of, bikes or whatever you happen to sell on there, you really want Claude to think well of you. You really want, to show up well in these things. And, I think we're just going to see more and more of that, where search is just something that's in all of our different applications and less of a separate destination.
Wow, that's really interesting. And Michael, what's next for you? What are you building, or what is your vision for the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So, I don't think anyone knows exactly where all of this is going to go, including myself, even spending, every waking hour working on it. But I do think there are some general trends and we're trying to meet those. I definitely think that the fracturing of search means we need better tools as marketers, as people that are trying to do sales and trying to do business, just to get our hands around all of this, where we used to just be able to basically think about Google and nobody else. Now we have to think about 10 different systems. You need automation for that. We're trying to build that. And we're trying to help, I think, balance as well. Another big thing that hasn't occurred yet with AI search is really the commercialization of it, where you still can't go to Google at least today, it's maybe change next week, but today you can't go and say like, hey, I want to bid on a keyword to show up in the AI search
Yeah.
results. That's coming. We're seeing lots of different integrations and like hints of that, but it's not quite there yet. And so I think that's also going to be a big opportunity for us to help with the automation and tracking and building of those systems.
Wonderful. Michael, if you look back at your journey, what would have you done differently right now?
I think like most startup founders, I wish I had started sooner. I wish I had started,
Everybody thinks that. Everybody
yeah,
says
6
that.
months, just to have a little more space. And yeah, maybe I would have chosen a less weird name for our company. I don't know. I like it, but I know some
What does
people
it mean
struggle with it.
actually? If you'd like to share more about it.
Sure. So the name Knowatoa, my general thought is that we're trying to kind of get our hands around the knowledge. And so that's where the no comes from. And it's sort of a mountain of knowledge. I thought of Krakatoa. And so Knowatoa, I thought this is like, it kind of rhymes a little bit and kind of flows. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't say another challenge with the naming is just that the terms for all of this AI search stuff is changing so rapidly. Like currently we call it AI overviews, but it was at one point the search generative experience. And before that, it was just AI search. It's probably going to change again. And I think we're just trending towards this is just going to be search engine optimization again, that all of these special terms are going to go away and it's just going to be SEO. But yeah, well, we'll see how it
But
goes.
do you feel like, the existing companies, like, there are SEMrush, there are other Majestic AI, there are Ahrefs, there are other tools who are coming up with their own AI platforms, integrating it to the current system. Will you be directly competing with them, or, you will have a different direction?
I think we're definitely, this is a classic business question, which is at some level, it is a commodity to be able to do a search and say where a company shows up in that. And it's our challenge as a founder to try to come up with a way to make our platform, the Knowatoa platform, less and less of a commodity. And, some of that is features, some of it's brand, some of it's education, some of it's, getting on podcasts like this and talking to people. So there's a lot to be done, but I think we've cracked the core of this, which is, doing the search and showing that. And I think, it's just going to be a challenge every day from here on out to try to innovate, to try to show these other different pieces of this. Like, here's an example. Something we're doing that I'm not aware of any other platform is doing is with traditional search, there is a Google Webmasters Tools, Google
Yeah.
Search Console. You can go, you can register your site, you can check if Googlebot can index your site. Is there one of those for ChatGPT? No. Is there one of those for Claude? No. None of these new systems have them. So what we built was a tool that checks all these different systems that, hey, if a web request comes to your website and with this user agent that matches the Google's new extended bot, which is used for AI mode and for all these different things, will it be blocked? Hey, if Claudebot comes and tries to index your site, your public marketing website, will it be blocked? And we have a tool that checks this, like 24 different bots that are used for this and all sorts of different stuff. And that's very helpful. Again, it goes to the automation because it is hard to check 24 different,
Yeah.
things every single week for your clients, for your own site. We'll check that and let you know if something goes wrong, and that is not strictly, yeah, we ran a search and like your brand showed up third in it. That's a new thing. And we're trying to come up with
Absolutely.
more and more new things like that.
That's interesting, because even when I use it, I don't see any crawling. That is, I can see that any AI platforms are crawling my website or any pages and getting that information. That's very interesting. One final question, Michael.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur, founder entering the AI space? And please don't tell me it starts sooner. I need something different.
I think by far the largest expense of any startup is people. And oftentimes that's developers. And in the same way that, we've had these previous waves of technology like cloud computing come in and all these different
Yeah.
things that just dramatically decreased the cost of like setting up an actual application online and doing all this stuff. I think we are seeing the coding tools getting to the point where there can be more and more interesting and different applications that are done for marketing that are, new features. And that cost equation is really changing. And so I think it's shifting some to the side of more like a product manager role, where a product manager can take on a little bit more software things that were traditionally software development. And I think that changes the frame at which you can execute, where there's more you can do, there's different things you can do because it changes that value equation. So that would be my suggestion, which is founders, even if they think of themselves as a non-technical, non-software development founder, they should at least get as much of their experience with software development as they can to know about it, to at least ask the right questions and sort of push those boundaries.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us and
Thank
accepting the
you. This was
invitation.
great. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and just a delight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.